Hi, my name is Dawn. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner, which you already know that. In our previous video, we talked about being consumers of fear. We talked about how in this society, we often are just driven by fear. We may be afraid that we're not using the right shampoo, or we're not looking young enough, or we're not fit enough, or the end of the world is coming, or we're not going to get the right politician in office and everything is going to come unglued. And a lot of conspiracy theories. A lot of my patients, often patients will come in and they have been just overwhelmed by fear and anxiety because of finding conspiracy theories on the internet and going down these rabbit holes of just imagining the worst possible thing that could happen if this thing is true, and even get into delusional thinking and paranoia. And we get into some schizophrenia with that. And it is just this very tragic event that takes place that I often wonder, was this person predisposed to this, or really did they drive themselves to this madness, staying up all night worrying about these things? Now, what I always tell the patients when they come in and they tell me their conspiracy theories, my question always is, what are you going to do about it? A patient can come in that is an IT executive and is just consumed by all the things that they see and not having privacy and all of these different, I'm aware of these things. I read about them. I believe that they're probably true. So when they say to me, do you realize that you have no privacy? Do you realize there's cameras everywhere? Yes, I realize it. What am I going to do about it? I can live in fear and I can have no life whatsoever and be consumed by it. And media and politicians and the powers that be want me to be consumed by fear. They want me to buy into all these things. They want to keep me stuck in this fear, because if they do that, then they can sell their product to me, or they can get me to vote for them. We are consumers of fear, and our society preys on us to be consumers of fear. We can't do anything about many of these things that are fed to us. If we ruminate on them, if we worry about them, all we're doing is ruining ourselves of the peace, robbing ourselves of the peace that we have in this moment. Think back to the conspiracy theories and the elections maybe. Think back to all those spaces that we've gone through where we were worried about these things. I'm personally thinking back to when the 4 blood moons thing came out, and it was this big hype. A lot of the apocalypse things that come out, a lot of the stars lining up, or 2020, or 2019 going into 2020, or 2012, and everybody's getting ready for the end of the world. Didn't happen, but look how much time we wasted in fear. Look how much time we were so absorbed in imagining these things. Well, what am I going to do if this person does that? Or if somebody breaks in and tries to take my things? What am I going to do? And so we're preempting. Goes back to what we talked about with fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and the trauma response. We're keeping our brain busy by imagining these worst case scenarios, and we're not living in the moment and enjoying our lives. And the religion I grew up in, we were preparing for the apocalypse every few years because it was going to happen, and we were preparing and we were hoarding food and water, and it didn't happen. But from the time I was about 5 or 6 years old, we were preparing for it. Now think about that. Think about the trauma that everybody was going through because some pastor declared, oh, it's going to happen soon. A lot of these declarations that are made that increase our fear are just there to control us. I'm begging you to try to live in the moment and try to live in some peace. My patients, and many of you that are my patients, when we give in to that fear, we typically want to self-medicate. When we give in to that fear, we can go down that path of self-destruction, of self-harm, and even suicide. We can go down that path of psychosis, staying up all night, getting into these theories and getting into these things and looking at them online, and it's consuming us, and then eventually our brain just can't handle anything else and it splits. It's so important. It's so important that we start learning how to live in the moment, that we start learning how to meditate, that we start learning how to shift in our thinking. If you're a Christian, you shouldn't be doing any of this. And what I was raised in was pretty much all that. Perfect love casts out all fear. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, self-control. Those are the fruit of the Spirit. If you're interacting with a group of people, a congregation, and there's not love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, and self-control, then they're not dwelling in the Spirit of God. When we have these spirits of anger and fear, fear is just the ego. Fear is the ego fighting for survival. So when we have these, and whether it's packaged as being obsessed about the end of the world or being obsessed about gay marriage, it's Pride Month, being obsessed about all these different things, thinking somehow we're accomplishing something good or God's will, we're not. We're just absolutely not. We were created to dwell in the presence of our Creator and to be love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, and self-control. I have a lot of patients that come in here with religious trauma. When we use our Creator against people, when your Creator is used against you, that is the ultimate of taking the Lord's name in vain. So it's about you and your Creator, and it's about being in the moment with your Creator. When you're dwelling in fear, you are not dwelling in God's love, no matter how you package it. When you're dwelling in anger, you're not dwelling in God's love, no matter how you're packaging it. When you are having these emotions, I want to encourage you to move in the opposite spirit. And this is something that many religions teach. This is something that many, the Wellbriety movement, which is a part of a movement that I'm part of in the Native American community, they teach moving in the opposite spirit, moving in the opposite energy. When I have a patient that I'm not sure what direction to go with them, I'm not sure what their calling is, oftentimes I'll look at their destructive pattern. If their destructive pattern has been hate, then I know they're called to love. And I need to speak that love into them. I need to encourage them to be that love. When it's chaos, I know that they're called to peace, that's what they're called to be. To calm. That's what they're called to be. That's what we're called to be. So when we're having these anxious thoughts, identify that anxious thought. It's almost always fear. No matter how it looks, it's almost always fear. And a lot of us are grieving something from the past. And if you look at the stages of grieving, we may look angry all the time, but we may be grieving something. So it's good to kind of identify these things, to check in with yourself. But if you are living in fear, you don't have to. But you have to be willing to put down the things that are triggering the fear for you. And you having knowledge of a conspiracy theory does not put you in control. You may imagine you're in control if you have a knowledge of it so you can preempt harm, but you're not. None of us are. Control is an illusion. The only thing you have control over is 6-foot radius around yourself. And when you want to exercise a situation, when you want to have control over a situation, what I encourage my patients to do is, the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Sphere of influence. If I have a situation I'm struggling with, and this is me, and I only have power over this, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I absolutely cannot change the past. Absolutely cannot change the past. The government, I can vote. I have a little bit of influence. I can't change what's going on. I can just be proactive with it. Another person, I can't change other people. I can change how I respond to other people, but I can't change that person. So what I'd like for you to do when you're just so overwhelmed with fear, or you're so overwhelmed with a problem, write down the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and write it out here on this sphere of influence. What can I not change? The courage to change the things I can, guess what? That's the courage to change yourself and your thought patterns, and the wisdom to know the difference. Where does it land? And try to avoid all or nothing thinking. Sometimes when we have an issue come up, we think, oh, it's going to be this, and we go into this all zone, or we ignore it completely. But there's usually somewhere in between that's manageable. So that's my little soapbox for the day. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.